Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavad-gita, as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Chapter 11, Text 36. Arjuna Uvacha Sthane Hrishikesha Tava Prakirtya Jagat Prahrishyatyanu cha Rakshangsi bhitani disho dravanti Sarve namasyanti cha siddha sanghaha. The world becomes joyful upon hearing your name, Arjuna says to Krishna. Well, not quite everyone. The demons, they don't like it very much. They flee. Here in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says that the demigod siddhas and intelligentsia of the higher planets were observing the fight because Krishna was present there. So also when the devotees are performing Sankirtan, the demigods, when the devotees perform Sankirtan, then the demigods, they're also very pleased. When devotees on this planet perform Sankirtan. Because the demigods, they may also perform Sankirtan, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes. That when Narada Muni, he plays his Vina and he sings the name Radhika Ramana, then all the demigods, they join in ecstasy. To the members of the public who observed and heard the Harinam Sankirtan that we performed yesterday evening, they may think, I don't know what they think. Most people seem to be quite happy. It used to be that when we performed Harinam Sankirtan in many parts of the world, that many people would be very inimical to that. Some people would verbally insult the devotees and some would physically attack them. But generally, the more we do Sankirtan, the more people become purified. And we saw last night how pretty much everyone was quite happy with that. They may not have known what it is or why it is, but they recognized it's something nice. One suggestion I have for next year, for this festival, and for the Harinams, when you have many devotees, we need more kartals and mridangas. Rohini Kumar Prabhu has a good strong voice, but we need good strong backup also. So there's happiness in Harinam Sankirtan. Is it not? Our devotees also became very happy. That is natural. Because Nama Chintamani Krishnas Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha Purno Shuddha Nityamukta Abhinatvan Nama Namino Ho. The holy name of Krishna is transcendental desire stone, is the very form of all spiritual mellows. Being non-different from Krishna, the holy name is complete, perfect, pure, always beyond the material realm. As Krishna is blissful, so those who take the holy name of Krishna on their tongue also become blissful. And we aspire for the stage of having taste for the holy name. Kobe hobe bolo shedin amar oparada guchi shuddha name ruchi kripa bole hobe hridaye shancha. Bhaktivinoda Thakur aspires for that day when he says, when my offenses will vanish and I will have taste for the pure holy name of Krishna. This will all be infused into my heart by the mercy, by the strength of the mercy of Guru and Krishna. So, the pure stage of, we may not all be in the pure stage of chanting, but we can still feel the happiness of chanting Hare Krishna. The happiness of chanting Hare Krishna is partially due to the fact that we forget our mind. The happiness that we experience in chanting Hare Krishna is partially because we forget our mind. The yogis, they feel peace in meditation. Yogis or Buddhists or those who perform this so-called transcendental meditation, there is a feeling of relief, a release, because the mind is always running on, babbling, blah, 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 blah. So to get relief from the constant babble of the mind, that in itself is gives us a sense of happiness. Similarly, if we're absorbed in anything, we forget everything else. That's the meaning of absorption. There is an example given in the, it's a lokik nyai, or a saying, you can say, in Sanskrit. In India, it's common, and probably was in Russia until fairly recently, maybe still, that a cobbler sits on the side of the road and he repairs shoes, and makes new shoes when he doesn't have any repairs to do. So the example is given that a cobbler may be so much absorbed in repairing a shoe that he may not notice even if the king comes past. And if a king comes past, it doesn't mean just the king, there's a whole parade. Just like in the present day when some big government leader comes before his car goes several police cars, and they have the sirens blaring, and there are police cars before and after, or military guard or whatever. So when the king comes in public, there'll be a horse parade and drums banging and bugles bugling, and such a parade may go past a cobbler and he may not even notice it if he's completely absorbed in cobbling. So often people, they try to absorb themselves in something to forget the troubles in their mind. For instance, there are workaholics who they just go on working and working and working. They don't want to stop to think about what else is going on in their life, because it's too painful for them to think about. Now, of course, pure devotees, they don't have a troubling mind to become free from, because their mind is absorbed in love of Krishna. And their natural taste is for the holy name. But for others who are not on that pure platform, a part of the happiness of the holy name is just forgetting everything else that we have to contend with in this world. This phenomenon, it's studied by psychologists, the phenomenon of religious ecstasy. People, they become, as they say, possessed by a deity. Sometimes that happens in India, that we have kirtan and someone becomes as if possessed by a ghost, and they behave wildly and start screaming, or they may faint. It's not ecstasy of love of Krishna. Maybe some ghost inside them doesn't like the kirtan and they're protesting. Anyway, we can philosophically understand that everyone who becomes absorbed in kirtan, it's not necessarily that everyone's on the highest level of God realization. We may think that devotees, they're really attached to the holy names. But there are many people throughout the world who are attached to performing music or singing or dancing. So even though a devotee may chant the names in kirtan a lot, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're actually attached to the pure chanting of the holy name. They may have attachment also, or maybe overwhelmingly, to the musical style and cadence. They may be attached to promoting their own egoism by showing themselves to be a great singer. We see some devotees, they become very enthusiastic about kirtan when they're leading it. Earlier this year in Mayapur, I came to lead the Mangalarti Kirtan, and my name was on the roster. I was appointed. With more than 1,000 devotees present in Mangalarti every day, they appoint someone to lead it. But there was a devotee of sorts visiting from Delhi who was quite upset because he wanted to lead, and he stood there pouting. Pouting means like a child putting on a upset look on his face. And as soon as the kirtan finished, he started, while I started to say the Jai Dhvani, Jai Om Vishnu Pad, he started remonstrating loudly in Hindi that, well, tomorrow I'm going to lead. You have to allow me to lead. This was a fully grown man, physically fully grown, not a 6-year-old child. So, we may have childish desires to be recognized for leading kirtan or singing or whatever. Now, I'm not saying that everyone who likes to lead kirtan is simply doing it so out of egoism, but it may be in some cases. The point I'm trying to get across is that attachment to the holy name will be seen not only in how much we chant it, but in our whole personality. Sometimes I become surprised at how devotees who clearly have very strong material attachments, they are nevertheless attracted to Krishna consciousness, aspects of Krishna consciousness, almost like pure, full attraction. Up to the present day in India, when there are dramas or recitations of Srimad Bhagavatam, many people like to come. They like to hear or witness activities of Krishna. So they have attraction and attachment at some level. In Bombay, there was Mrs. Singhal. She was a housewife living close to Hare Krishna land. One time she came into Srila Prabhupada's presence with one of her friends, and one of them was playing a violin, and they were singing Hare Krishna in a very happy way. They just came in without any, it wasn't arranged or anything. They just kind of came like that. Tamal Krishna Goswami was present. Tamal Krishna Goswami is well known as being very strict in Krishna consciousness. And he looked at Srila Prabhupada as if to say, what on earth is going on? And Srila Prabhupada said, they have natural attraction to Krishna. They're more advanced than you. Well, are they really willing to give their whole life to spread Krishna consciousness as Tamal Krishna Goswami had done? They like to chant Hare Krishna, no doubt, but at the same time, the majority of their life is absorbed in day-to-day family activities. So on one hand, they have a natural attachment, but on the other hand, they still have strong attachment to material life. One middle-aged couple from Delhi, Pranav Prabhu and his wife, disciples of Srila Prabhupada. They were helping so much in the overseeing the affairs of the construction of Krishna Balaram temple in Vrindavan at a time when very few Indian devotees were coming forward to help. And they were fully dedicated to, they were working so hard and really working to help Srila Prabhupada's mission. They were aged about 50, something like this. But Srila Prabhupada, he pushed Pranav again and again. You should don't live with your wife. Now you become renounced. And eventually Pranav couldn't take the pressure anymore, and then he withdrew from that service. So on the one hand, he was very attached or very dedicated to serving Krishna and Srila Prabhupada's mission. On the other hand, he had what Srila Prabhupada perceived as being what we can understand that Srila Prabhupada perceived as a material attachment to his wife. Now this doesn't mean that hearing this, that every male should decide to renounce his wife. In the Vedic culture, there is a certain age for doing that. Prior to that, generally one should not do so. But the point is that cultivating attachment for Krishna, that also has to be alongside non-attachment to everything else. The definition of, or a definition of bhakti is given in Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhakti pareshanubhavo viraktiranyatra. Bhakti means experience of the Supreme Lord and detachment from everything else. Now, generally, the two will go together. Vasudeve bhagavati bhakti yogamahakshare ahaitokya pratihata yayatma suprasidati. By performing devotional service unto Vasudeva, then automatically knowledge and detachment arise. Bhakti yoga prayojata. But that will not necessarily arise unless we cultivate devotion very strongly. And we should also know the philosophy as given in Bhagavad-gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, that we do not belong to this world, we should not be attached to it. So feelings for Krishna, we may understand how real they are if we don't have feelings for attachment to anything material. Now definitely when we chant, that will be beneficial. Srila Prabhupada often gave the example that if you put the hand in the fire, you're going to get burned. Here's a quote from Srila Prabhupada. When you go to the fire, the heat is there, but the temperature may be different. Anyway, some way or other, if you go to the fire, you'll get some heat. So some way or other, if we become involved with Krishna, there is some benefit. But the real benefit from chanting Hare Krishna will be if we are conscientiously cultivating a mood of pure devotional service. Chanting Hare Krishna means to pray, "O Krishna, O energy of Krishna, please engage me in your service." So we also need to hear what is the nature of that service. With what attitude should we perform that service? Because Radha and Krishna are not obliged to accept our service. We may think, oh, it's very nice to hear about Radha Krishna Leela, but we have to be trained to acquire the qualification to enter there. That qualification begins with anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karma dhyanavritama anukulyena krishna anushilanam bhakti rutama. Cultivating devotional service without any personal desire. Otherwise, we may be cultivating a taste for the holy name, but not for the pure chanting of the holy name. We may be cultivating a taste for nama parada. I had a gross, I saw a gross demonstration of this many years ago. Actually, during my years in Bangladesh, I saw many demonstrations of this. Some examples of seeing people in kirtan jumping, singing, playing mridanga, and apparently in great ecstasy, but chanting a bogus mantra in praise of a bogus so-called avatar. You may say, well, maybe that person really is an avatar, and that, otherwise how could they have ecstasy? No, he's not an avatar. It's just some concoction. I often used to say when traveling in Bangladesh that people say that Bangladesh is the most unfortunate country in the world. At that time, now it's come up to somewhere in the. It's come up. It's not on the bottom now. It's still in the bottom 10% probably. Maybe not even that. But anyway, it doesn't matter. But I said, well, I think Bangladesh is the most fortunate country in the world. Because in this vast universe with millions of planets and stars, there's only one God. But in Bangladesh, in every village, there's God. Some made-up avatar. So, well, that's an exaggeration. But so anyway, that's I could understand these people. They think they're in ecstasy, but it's not the real thing. And it was a common thing. You see, they have these professional kirtan groups, and then when they've finished their 2-hour stint or gig, then they go and they smoke bidis. And during their gig, they'll be showing great bhav, and they may even fall on the ground and swoon and have to Some will come and fan them to try and bring them back to life. And they do. I mean, they chant Hare Krishna many hours a day, but there's a lot of showmanship in that. If they don't put on a good show, then they won't get a booking. And they need to. It's like professional rock groups. They have to get hired for concerts. So we have to be very careful that in our ISKCON also.
Cool.
Now we have professional kirtaniyas in ISKCON also. It means people who are flown around the world to perform in kirtan melas. Because they chant in a way that is pleasing to the senses of others. It's not seen what their sadhana is, what their personal life is, what their philosophical understanding is, what their material attachments are, but it's just seen how nicely they can sing. So we should become attached to the pure chanting of the holy name. There are certain techniques, of course, in chanting. Keeping time instead of singing, and the cartels are out of time, which seems to be a Russian specialty, especially in the Sri Guru Charana Padma song. Did any of you notice? I guess not, otherwise.
In Russia they always play.
Always, yeah.
It's Russian style.
But it's Russian style, but it's musically it's wrong.
They keep the rhythm, but it's
1, 2, 3, but the singing is out of sync. Well, you may say, but it's from you can ask any musicologist, east or west, and they'll say that it's wrong. So the thing is, there are so many things to tell you that you'd go crazy after 5 minutes if I started telling you all the things that you have to improve on. Therefore I'm writing books, and you can refer to all the points in the books. You may have noticed that the deities here, the clothes are not changed all the time we've been here. It's not that you may say, well, that's okay. Bhakti Vikasa Swami thinks it's okay because he was there and he didn't say anything. Well, now I'm saying something. There's nothing to stop anyone bringing some deities and doing whatever they like with them, but that doesn't mean that it's bona fide deity worship. So in devotional service, we have to consciously understand what is the difference between artha and anartha. What is the pure state of Krishna consciousness and that which is mixed with unwanted propensities. Otherwise we may be cultivating anarthas, as described by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his teachings to Rupa Goswami, in describing the cultivation of the creeper of devotional service. There may be whole sampradayas that arise that are firmly committed to cultivating anarthas in the name of devotional service. And the common people, they can't understand the difference. Therefore, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur invested so much energy into pointing out that these people who appear to be Vaishnavas, they're not really practicing Vaishnava Dharma properly at all. So he may say, well, don't criticize others, they're chanting Hare Krishna. But it may be that the attitude that they're cultivating and inculcating while chanting won't actually help us to advance in Krishna consciousness. So try to understand everything very carefully, very clearly. Otherwise, in the name of bhakti, we may be just watering the weeds instead of watering the actual plant of pure devotion. So be happy, chant Hare Krishna and be happy. That's Srila Prabhupada's order. But be happy in the pure desire to serve Krishna. Krishna consciousness is very simple and natural and pleasing. So remain happy in that Krishna consciousness. And we have to be careful not to be misled by others who want to introduce Sahajya ideas, Mayavad ideas, and Karmi ideas. Hare Krishna. Any question about this, please? Wait a minute. Let's see some hands. All right. You had a question yesterday. Yeah. All right. You ask. You also had a question yesterday.
How to understand properly what is renunciation? What is renunciation? And how to utilize material energy in the service of Krishna?
How we understand properly what is renunciation and how to utilize the material energy in service of Krishna. Actually, this word renunciation, it's a different word to the word detachment. Renunciation is tyag, and detachment is vairagya.
Okay.
Detachment means a sense of detachment, whereas tyag means
Action.
yeah, action. Right, very good. So you seem to be hinting about yukta vairagya here. So that is described. Anasaktasya vishayan yatarham upayunjataha nirbandha krishna sambandha yuktam vairagya muchyate. When you're not attached to anything of this world, but we see everything in this world in relation to Krishna and use everything in this world in Krishna's service without being attached to it. So the principle is simple to understand.
One shouldn't chant Hare Krishna at all if he gets this chanting, or if he receives this chanting from a person who has impure motives. Then it means that he also has this wrong attitude. Can we make a conclusion that one shouldn't...
We shouldn't chant Hare Krishna if we receive it from someone who has impure motives. That's the question.
Not exactly. The question is, from the things that you mentioned in the lecture, can we make a conclusion then it's better not to chant at all, because one may receive this chanting from one who has impure motives.
It's better not to, the proposal is that it's better not to chant at all because we might receive it from someone who has impure motives. Actually, we can practically see that people who take to devotional service are very much influenced by the association by which they take to devotional service. If someone takes to devotional service through the medium of someone who is promoting karma or jnana mixed bhakti, then they will also tend to be in that mold themselves. And it's very difficult once they're molded in a certain way to take them out of that if it's the wrong mold. So therefore individually one should try to find out that association by which the chanting will actually be fruitful in the proper and full sense. Is it not? We can all see this, that devotees, depending on the guidance they get, their whole attitude to devotional service is formed, and it'll be different among different devotees. Now, it doesn't mean that one shouldn't take the devotional service unless he gets the devotional inspiration from someone who's completely pure. Someone may not be completely pure, but if they're working or serving under the guidance of a pure devotee, and they're not trying to exploit that situation for themselves, then the current of pure devotion can come through. Srila Prabhupada encouraged George Harrison to promote the chanting of Hare Krishna. George Harrison was a famous musician at the time. I think many of you may have heard his name. Maybe you wouldn't have heard his name if you hadn't taken to Krishna consciousness. Someone who's very famous now, in a few years they'll be largely forgotten. Anyway, George Harrison wasn't a completely pure, but he was spreading the holy names under the direction of Srila Prabhupada, without any motivation for name, fame, glory, money, because he already had all those things. And actually many devotees, they took to devotional service being inspired by the fact that George Harrison was inspired himself by chanting Hare Krishna. For many devotees, that was a strong influence on their favorableness toward devotional service, toward Krishna consciousness. Here in Russia, the first preacher of Krishna consciousness at grassroots level was Ananta Shanti, Srila Prabhupada's disciple. Without going into details, we can say that he didn't, in many respects, he didn't exhibit the symptoms of a pure devotee, but the mercy, the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu worked through him enough to a sufficient extent that many people from his starting preaching, they took to devotional service in those days, back in the 1970s. But a general idea of Krishna consciousness may be given by various people. But if one comes under the training and guidance of someone who has motives, personal motives, then that gets, in most cases, that gets imparted to the student. Definitely, yes, chant Hare Krishna, but one should also be careful in choosing one's association. It's not all the same. We can go to 2 ISKCON centers and they may have arti and prasadam and a class, and the format is pretty much the same. But the mood may be quite different in many ways. Okay, so today is the last day of this festival, and I suppose that many of you will be departing today. I'm scheduled for one more lecture. That will be this evening at the ISKCON Center in Nizhny, Novgorod in the city at 5:45. So it's time to say thank you to all of you for coming, and hope to see you all again. Thank you for those who are organizing, cooking, cleaning, making garlands, and so many services to make this festival successful. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.